I kind of recall that Biggie and Tupac got shot. Man, that was what?
Really? That's what we doing?
Look, man, I'm from the hood. Not really, but that was.
You're not from the hood.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the House of Ways and Means. We are on the 4th episode of our Generation series. So who are we talking about today?
The Millennials.
Millennials. Alright, so the Millennials are occupying the years of about 1980 to about 2000. So those are the birth years. If I could use one word to kind of sum up the environment under which millennials grew up in, it would be technology. Technology. So as we stated before, we're both millennials. Ways, what are some of the things that you remember as you were coming up, the things that happened, just major events that happened in your childhood and as you got into young adulthood?
So I would say the recession, 9/11, in addition to domestic and international attacks like school shootings, anthrax, bombings, things of that nature. Am I missing anything?
I kind of recall that Biggie and Tupac got shot. Man, that was what?
Really? That's what we doing?
Look, man, I'm from the hood. Not really, but that was.
You're not from the hood.
That was a big deal. All right, so we talked about the internet and everything that came with that, just a lot of technology expansion. How would you say all those things impacted millennials in the way that they kind of see the world and the way that they respond to the world?
Well, because we were so reliant on the technology, the use of phones, things like that, it was a very must have it now type society. So whatever we needed, we almost had it at the snap of our fingers. Google search was there. If we needed to order something, if we needed to research something, it was right there. So while it was good that we had the technology to do all this research, what I guess was the negative part of the social media and how that affected the millennials is that we were not able to truly develop our interpersonal skills. Right? So we were communicating with people via email and things like that, but when it came to social interaction, face-to-face interactions, we experienced a lot of social anxiety.
It's interesting that you say that. I had a boss one time tell me, not about me, but just about kind of millennials in general, when it came to hiring for internships, full-time jobs, how they only wanted to communicate over email. Like if it wasn't email communication, they wouldn't want to even have a phone interview. They wouldn't want to come in for an in-person interview. Like as soon as it escalated beyond, hey, let's, this email communication, a lot of them just disappeared. They stopped responding. It was just like,
it's not surprising.
I don't need that. We don't need to go to that level of communication. It's a little invasive. We don't need to do all that for me to cinch this job. So it's interesting also for us, we're probably earlier millennials, right? So I think we both kind of remember a point in time when there was no internet, where everybody didn't have a cell phone. It's crazy. There's the latter part of the millennial generation. They grew up from birth having the internet around them, probably seeing their parents use it, and not just the cheapo dial-up that we had. We had. I know y'all remember not being able to talk on the phone because somebody was trying to use the internet, or your mom picking up the phone and the internet shutting off. You be like, Mom, I was in the middle of downloading my picture file. That was took an hour. All right, so let's talk a little bit about millennials and the way they were raised in their home life. What would you say that was like for them?
Well, remember they were pretty much raised by the boomers and the Gen X, right? So for the most part, especially with the Gen X parents, those family values were really strong. So the Gen Xers had a purpose. Their babies were born with schedules. So, at 5 years old, you had your kids in ballet, they were in karate, after school, they were doing all these different things.
Playing
Boy Scout, Girl Scout, playing instrument, like you said. There was all these things that were happening for, the millennials. And we found ourselves being very busy. As children, we were busier than almost any other generation, that came, before us.
Busier than our parents. One chauffeur us all over town.
Yeah, but as a result, what that did is it gave us this wide range of opportunity, which in a sense is great because you want an opportunity to be able to look at your options and choose, what you feel would be the best fit for you. However, because of all the different things that we were a part of, because of these busy schedules, these various activities, it became really difficult for us to select what it is that we wanted to do. Whether with our education, selecting a major, there were a lot of people that were undecided in school as millennials. So imagine you're racking up debt while you're undecided in a major. It's not really cost effective. I'm considering Erikson's 8 stages of development. So in psychology, there are different stages of development. A couple of the main ones are Piaget. That's really just 4 stages. And then there's Erikson's. I really subscribe to Erikson's 8 stages of development. So from birth all the way to, being a senior 65 and plus, there are various stages, and each stage is categorized by a series of ages. And so throughout the development, there are different things that we experience. What Erikson did is that there were pretty much 2 things that were kind of happening simultaneously within each stage. So with this particular stage, it is identity versus role confusion. So as millennials, what happened is that this stage age range has expanded beyond 21 years old because you have 25-year-olds who are still trying to figure out what to do. I liken it to you knowing that you want to eat Chinese food, for instance, but you decide to go to a buffet. And so now you have all these options, and instead of just going for the Chinese options, the Chinese food options that are there on display, you're getting barbecue ribs, you're getting mac and cheese, then you're getting fried chicken, you're doing all these different things because the options are there. And so you're drawn to, I just need to try a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But what happens is that you become so compounded by all these options that you end up being really confused about who you are, what you want to do, and where you want to go. And that has presented to be a real problem with millennials.
Yeah, that's real. I mean, I can speak on that myself. It's kind of like you have all these different things that you want to do. And the reason that you think that you can shoulder all these different things is because they've been presented to us in such a simple and concise way, which is maybe not accurate. Mm-hmm. So, I think a lot of the DIY movement has come out of, the millennials thinking that they can do so many things. And the reason why is because, if you want to do something and you don't know how, you just throw on HGTV real fast and they'll show you how to do it in a half-hour space of time. So that'll have you really thinking, hey, I can do this. Yeah, it looks easy. It looks simple. Watch a YouTube video. Oh, I can do that. This guy.
Yeah. I think too what that creates is a level of anxiety, and that's the piece I didn't mention before. If you try to do something, you fail at it, you try a Pinterest recipe or a DIY project, and suddenly your project doesn't quite look like how it looks on Pinterest, you develop a level of anxiety. And if you continue to feel anxious about not being able to meet these expectations that you've set for yourself, which really is unrealistic, then guess what? You fall into a depression. And so that's why there are a lot of people that if they have anxiety disorder, they could also suffer from depression.
So you're saying if I try to start an online business that I run from my room while I at the same time renovate my house and try to cook gourmet dishes that actually require, beyond an intermediate level of skill, I'm gonna try to do them, and then one day I'm gonna be like, once I run into trouble and frustration and realize that I don't really have the ability to do these things as easily as I want, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my gosh, what is my purpose in life?
And keep in mind too that we're not the generation that's resilient. It's the Gen Xers that are resilient because they were latchkey kids and they were able to rely on themselves for things. We, on the other hand, we were kind of coddled by our parents, who protected us from the world, and so we had no true sense of the risk that we were taking, trying to do all these different things at the same time.
Well, I'd push back on that a little bit. The reason being is because we go back to the big recession. A lot of us were put in situations where our circumstances changed very suddenly. I mean, I was kind of early in my career at that point in time, and I ended up losing my job, and I was just like, what am I supposed to do now? And I had to make do, and I'm still here. Obviously, it didn't take me under completely, but for other people, there were situations like, imagine your parents had really good jobs, they lost them, home got foreclosed on, they had to sell the house, you had to move to a completely different neighborhood, you had to go to a different school, you had to be separated from your friends. I mean, all these things teaches you, the skills of how to be resilient, how to, make do with what you have, and how to, just become agile in a changing environment.
One other thing to add to what you're saying too is keep in mind that your parents aren't Gen Xers. Your parents are boomers. So you have a little bit of the Gen Xer personality where you have been able to develop resiliency, right? So there are those millennials whose parents are boomers, like we mentioned before, or the later millennials whose parents are Gen Xers. So there are going to be some millennials, whether in the first part or the second part, who are able to develop resiliency, yes. But keep in mind that you, sir, your characteristics more so mirror that of Gen Xer versus a millennial.
Yeah, I guess I am a hybrid. I'm a little old.
You're a little bit of a hybrid.
A little old.
So we've had all this talk about the social aspect and the family of millennials, but let's talk a little bit about the money and how the millennials have responded to handling money.
Well, I mean, I would say that millennials are probably the all-time best educated generation. So, we've gone, and these standards have changed so much to where a bachelor's degree is not going to cut it anymore. So we were out there getting our bachelor's degree pretty much as just a prerequisite. Then we were going into master's degrees, professional school, med school, dental school, the whole, all of that. So, we're saddled with lots of student debt. A lot of us are underemployed. So a lot of us have had to move back home with our parents, which is, it can be embarrassing. It can lead to mental health issues just in and of itself because it's really frustrating. Millennials are also, this isn't so much about our finances, but we really like a deal. And the reason is, it goes back to what we talked about, we have a lot of options. Now there's Amazon, and I think we've been known as industry killers in a way because, we don't shop the way our parents shopped. We don't want the things that our parents wanted. We don't want somebody to make something for us when we can watch a YouTube video and try to make it ourselves. It may not be the same quality, but hey, there's a lot of pride that can come from doing something yourself. So, retail has suffered because we're not going to the mall anymore. Most of you go to the mall today. Go to the nearest mall to you. It is a ghost town in there. Restaurants, we like to cook. We got YouTube videos showing us how to cook, gourmet meals. We got Blue Apron. If we don't want to cook, we can just get somebody to deliver the food directly to us. We got Uber Eats, DoorDash, all of that. So we're not going to Applebee's anymore. We're not going to TGI Fridays, or we're not even going to some of the higher end restaurants. So it's hurting their business model because they're going to have to learn to adapt to us rather than the other way around because, we are taking over the world now. This is just projection, but I think in the end we'll end up similar to the Gen Xers just because of the student debt. I mean, we like to shop too. I mean, so the question is, are you saving money or not? Because you get 10 things from Amazon for the same price as you got one before, but it leads you into a false sense of security that you're saving money. So you buy things that you don't need because you're like, well, it would have cost more, so I saved. So you get caught up in this. Well, I'm saving phantom money because you didn't need it in the first place. So there's definitely a lot of that. We're running up our credit card bills, and we are, we're stuck living at home. We're not able to really build wealth the way we want to. So hopefully, as we matriculate through the workforce, we'll make the world look more like we want to. I mean, we're really into socially conscious causes. We're into social activism. We're really active in our communities. We're diverse.
Yes.
We have more diversity than previous generations. And something I think maybe you might have some insight into. I think now we're in a really tolerant time, so we're able to be very free, and I think that's going to be a benefit for the ensuing generations that are coming down. But how do you think that is going to affect us mentally?
Well, it kind of goes back to the buffet analogy that I give. I'm thinking of a specific example. Let's talk a little bit about sexuality. So, like you mentioned, there are a lot of things that were taboo back then, right? Sexuality was one of them. Whether you were interested in having homosexual relations or being bisexual, it's more acceptable now. But what has happened is that people tend to engage in something just because it's an option as opposed to it being their actual choice. So what we're finding now is that, especially in psychology, is that a lot of people are presenting with gender dysmorphia. In the past, it was called gender identity disorder. And it's where an individual is struggling with their sexuality. They are unsure of whether they want to change their sex or if they may be coming into, facing obstacles with their family in regards to expressing who they truly are, but being in a place where they can express that. So I think what's happening is that people are beginning to add that as an option to their buffet. And that's fine, but I think what happens is that it just adds to confusion as far as people just not knowing where to go, and sometimes people just accepting something or doing something because it's an option that's available as opposed to them actually selecting it because that was their original choice. So going back to the buffet example, the individual that wanted Chinese food, you go to the buffet, and even though you see all these options, you're gonna select it because that's what you want, right? However, if that person did not want Chinese food, and they go there and they see Chinese food and it's selected anyway, they're really just selecting it because it's an option that's available as opposed to it being what they really wanted to do.
Well, one thing I think is important in what you said is that, now that things are less taboo, people are able to see easily find people who are going through the same experiences, and they can get support more readily and easily without, having to worry about being ridiculed. Mm-hmm. I mean, people died for this. Yeah. Basically.
There are a lot of people who have committed suicide because of this real confusion that they've experienced. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you have professionals out there. There are therapists, there are counselors. I'm a licensed therapist. I've seen people with the diagnosis of gender dysmorphia. There are ways that we can treat, individuals who have varying mental health issues. And I know that mental health in and of itself is also seen as taboo, but it's becoming less stigmatized. Mm-hmm. And so we want to continue moving in that direction because there are a lot of people who are affected by whether it's trauma in their past or other various things, that we just want to be able to provide that and heal the world. As millennials, that's what we want to do.
So guys, I feel like, we always hear so much in the media about millennials being this and that, and almost like people complaining about us. Like, I feel like we get a bad rap. I mean, as you can see, we've dealt with a lot in our lives. We have very specific struggles and issues. But I think there's a lot of hope. I mean, we're still very young. And I think, and it's part of the reason we wanted to do this series, because I think there's just a lot of misunderstanding between generations. I mean, the baby boomers are still working, Gen Xers are still working, and then they look at us, and it's just, we're not that much different, really. It's just your environment has so much to do with who you become, and I think they were very different environments that shaped all of us, all generations.
Absolutely.
And I just feel like, we're not as bad as people previous generations would have us think. I know I've come a long way in my career, and I'm finally where I want to be, and I know you guys are gonna get there too. Any parting thoughts?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up.
All right, well, that's it for the millennials, and that is it for the series. So if you like this content, hit the like button, subscribe, drop a comment down below. Let us know what you thought of the series. We're going to be coming out with more exciting content in the future, so we'll see you guys soon. All right?